"You have no right to be in this building," the woman said. Then she took one step closer, lowered her voice, and added, "You have the right to be at my table." Before we start, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. My name's Luke Archer, 36, male, single dad from Ohio. I was wearing a work shirt with my name stitched crooked over the pocket, sleeves rolled to the elbows, knuckles a little raw from a morning of coaxing a stubborn elevator back to life. In my arms, an old mahogany case, hinges polished, corners taped, cradling a vintage time clock I'd repaired for the skyscraper's gala tonight. Security had stopped me at the gleaming turnstiles like I was smuggling a dragon. "Delivery entrance is round back," said the guard, Ben Harris, 40, male, voice professional but tired. "Executive floors are off limits without a pass." "I tried the loading dock," I said. "They told me to come through the front since the freight lift's down again." He tapped the glass. The lobby smelled faintly of citrus and fresh coffee, a saxophone recording drifting from hidden speakers. Above us, a chandelier scattered warm light like a scoop of sunlight thrown on marble. Everyone here moved like they were late to a meeting with their future. Then the woman arrived. Olivia Grant, 35, female, CEO of Northbridge Labs, the big name on the building's crown. Tall, dark blonde hair swept into a neat twist, a navy suit softening at the shoulders instead of armoring them. Her heels clicked, then quieted as she took in my box, the grease on my forearms, and the way Ben hovered like a human stop sign. "You have no right to be in this building," she said. For half a breath the lobby went still. "You have the right to be at my table." She turned to Ben. "He's with me." Ben blinked and stepped aside. "Yes, ma'am." Olivia smiled at him. Genuine, not the corporate kind, and then at me, the corners of her eyes soft. "Mr. Archer, isn't it?" I shifted the case, managed a nod. "Luke's fine." "I'm Olivia," she said, and somehow it didn't feel like a headline. It felt like a person. "Will you walk with me?" We passed the concierge desk where Maya Patel, 29, female, gave me a quick thumbs up, like this sort of thing happened every day. It didn't. Not to guys like me who kept spare bolts in their pockets and carried coffee in a thermos with a dent that looked like the state of Florida. "Nice case," Olivia said as we stepped into a private elevator. It hummed, a gentle rush up the spine. "What's inside?" "Time," I said, smiling before I could stop myself and crack the lid so she could see the restored face, the tiny brass hands stilled at 12. "Company bought it for tonight's auction. Someone dropped it. I figured it deserved a second chance." "Second chances," she murmured like she was testing the shape of the words. "Those matter." The doors slid shut and the city shrugged smaller beneath us. My phone buzzed. A text from Noah, my boy, 9, male, pinged on the screen. A photo of a peanut butter sandwich arranged like a rocket ship, crusts forming fins. "Launch successful," his message read. A string of emojis. I smiled without thinking, the kind that loosens your shoulders. "You've got a kid," Olivia said, kind, not prying. "Noah," I said. "3rd grade, builds forts out of laundry and calls them fabric castles." "That's excellent architecture," she said, serious as a boardroom. "I used to build cities out of cereal boxes. I'm sure the zoning permits were questionable." I laughed, unexpected and easy. The elevator chimed and opened onto a floor that smelled faintly of cedar and espresso. Glass walls framed a skyline like a living painting. Clouds curled over the river in bright, friendly swirls. No gray, no gloom. Just afternoon light spilling gold on everything it touched. She led me past a corridor of quiet doors until we reached a small lounge with a round table. Not the long, intimidating kind. There were 4 chairs. On the table, a folder. Beside it, something that made my breath hitch. A napkin. A diner logo smudged in the corner. My handwriting across the center. "Where did you—" I started. "Bayview Diner," she said, meeting my eyes. 2 months ago. I was there late after visiting my father at St. Martin's. I spilled tea, strangely enough, and asked the server for extra napkins. This was under my plate. I could see the ink again, the rushed scrawl from a tired hand. If today was heavy, please borrow my belief. Tomorrow's lighter. I write notes sometimes, I said, feeling my ears warm. Little pep talks for strangers. Dumb habit, maybe. I don't sign them. Olivia traced the diner logo with her thumb. Not dumb. That night, I thought I'd reached the edge of what I could do. The note kept me from breaking apart. It felt like someone had stepped into the noise and whispered, "Hold on." She looked up. I kept it. I didn't know where to put my hands, so I settled for the case handle and the truth. I'm glad it helped. A catering cart rattled past. The smell of cinnamon. Somewhere, a printer chirped. Life happening in all directions. Olivia gestured to the chair across from her. Sit. Let me get you water. She poured it herself, not waving for an assistant. Tiny gesture, but it spoke louder than a speech. You said I belong at your table, I said, trying not to sound like a kid asking if the ride was really free. I did. She flipped open the folder, photos of long rows of servers, a sketch of a conveyor belt, boxes marked with flow arrows. Our holiday drive is tonight. Dozens of local shelters rely on us to get supplies out fast and with dignity. Last year we messed up. Long lines, cold faces. People felt like paperwork. She shook her head. You left a different kind of note a week ago, on a cardboard box in our loading dock. I blinked. I was repairing a lobby bench. The dock was chaos. I sketched a way to reroute the tables, give families a check-in moment with a volunteer who looks them in the eye. I didn't think anyone would. We read it, she said, and Luke, it was good, simple, human. I want to use it tonight, with your permission, and, if you'll stay, to help me run it. I glanced at my phone at Noah's rocket sandwich at the clock hands frozen at 12. I'm supposed to be off at 5. My neighbor, Mr. Clay, 67, male, watches Noah if I'm late. He feeds him apples and weird history facts. I looked back at her. I can stay. Something like relief flickered across her face. Thank you. She stood, energy warm as a porch light. There's more. We walked to a window overlooking the river, sun glancing off the water like laughter in bright shards. Below, the plaza was being dressed for evening, banners lifting, tables unfolding, volunteers placing small centerpieces made of pine and ribbon. No grand spectacle, just a lot of hands doing careful work. Olivia rested a hand on the glass, not to steady herself, but like she was in conversation with the view. The note on the napkin was one kindness, the sketch on the box was another. And before that, she said, turning to me, there was the grocery store. 3 months ago, checkout line 6. I had too many items for the express lane and not enough courage for the rest of the day. A man ahead of me paid for the woman behind him and asked the cashier to tell her, "Someone believes you can do hard things." The cashier pointed at your hands when she told the story later, said she recognized the scars from someone who fixes things for a living. Heat climbed my neck. That sounds like me. It was you, Olivia said simply. I've been trying to say thank you ever since, not with a speech, with a seat. Silence settled, not the awkward kind, the kind where both people are listening for the same small sound. Somewhere from the plaza, a child squealed, delighted by something ordinary and perfect like a cookie the size of their face. I set the time clock on a side table, lifted the front, and gently nudged the brass hands into motion. The second hand stuttered, then found its rhythm, tiny, brave steps around the circle. Seems alive, I said. So do I, Olivia answered, soft enough that only the room heard. Ben poked his head in, understanding flickering in his eyes like he'd walked into a scene and didn't want to break it. Ms. Grant, the board's assembling. They'd like to go over the distribution plan. Tell them I'll be there in 2 minutes, she said, then turned back to me. Will you do something a bit unfair? Depends, I said, smiling. Come with me and explain your plan to a room of people who think they've already heard every good idea. My stomach did a small, hopeful flip. I'm a repair guy with a decent napkin. That's my resume. Tonight, that's exactly the expertise we need. She reached for the napkin and held it between us like a treaty. You fixed something in me when you didn't know I was watching. Help me fix this. We stepped into the hallway, the world sharpening as footsteps and voices braided into purpose. The elevator arrived with a soft sigh and opened onto a boardroom that wasn't a fortress. Round table, mugs that didn't match, a plate of slightly crooked biscuits that looked blessedly homemade. Faces turned, some curious, some skeptical. Olivia touched my elbow, a small, steadying anchor. Everyone, she said, voice bright but grounded. This is Luke Archer. 36, single dad, and the reason our drive will feel like hope instead of bureaucracy. I felt every heartbeat like a drum in a parade I hadn't realized was for me. And then, before I could sit, the conference room door opened again. A woman stood there, early 40s, female in a school cardigan with a lanyard that read, Head Teacher. Her brown eyes widened when she saw me. Mr. Archer, she said. I'm Claire Abbott, 34, female, from Riverside Elementary. She held up a folder decorated with crayon rockets. Your son Noah wrote my class a letter about fabric castles. We brought something for you. She stepped forward and placed the folder in my hands. Inside was a single page, carefully printed. At the bottom, Noah had drawn the two of us, tiny figures holding a clock with bright, moving hands. My throat went tight. Olivia's voice was soft at my shoulder. Luke. There's more to this evening than an auction. I looked from the drawing to her, 100 questions sparking at once as the room leaned in, breath held. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The crayon clock on Noah's drawing had bright, uneven lines circling the page like time itself was made of wonder and glue sticks. Under it, he'd written in crooked letters, My dad fixes everything, even broken days. The room blurred. I swallowed hard and tried to laugh it off. Guess he oversells me. Olivia's voice softened. Or maybe he just sees you clearly. Before we start, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The board members shifted in their seats. Men and women in crisp suits suddenly looking more human, like someone had turned the fluorescent lights into morning sunshine. Claire Abbott, 34, the teacher, smiled gently. Noah told the class you were working on making time move again. None of us realized how literal that was. Everyone chuckled. Even I couldn't help it. That's my kid, big on metaphors. Olivia gestured toward the sketch on the folder. This, she said, is exactly why we're rethinking how we show up for people. It's not just logistics, it's empathy. And Luke here doesn't talk about solutions in charts or percentages. He writes them on napkins. One of the executives, a tall man in his 50s named Robert Gaines, leaned forward. So, Mr. Archer, he said with a faint smile, tell us about your plan. I took a slow breath. My palms were still damp, my heart a marching band in my chest. But Olivia's presence beside me, steady, calm, felt like gravity working in my favor. Well, I began, I think we forget that efficiency isn't kindness. You can hand someone a meal in 30 seconds and still make them feel invisible. Or you can take an extra 30 seconds and remind them they matter. Heads nodded. Someone murmured, That's true. So I drew a different layout, I continued, opening the sketch she'd saved. Families walk through a short line, but at the end, a volunteer greets each person by name, looks them in the eye and says something small but real. How's your day going? Or, you look sharp in that jacket. It's not charity, it's conversation. Claire smiled. And that helps people remember they're not alone. Exactly, I said. Sometimes the repair isn't in the wires or the gears, it's in the way we see each other. Silence spread, not heavy but thoughtful. Even Robert's expression softened. Simple, he said finally. but not easy, which usually means it's the right thing. Olivia turned to me. Would you help us set it up? Of course, I said. If I can borrow your tools and maybe a decent cup of coffee. That earned a laugh around the table, the kind that breaks formality and makes space for connection. By evening, the plaza outside had transformed into a warm, golden constellation of string lights. Tables lined the walkways, decorated with pine, paper lanterns, and trays of steaming cocoa. Families arrived one by one. Kids clutching their parents' hands, elderly couples in thick scarves, college volunteers arranging gift boxes in neat stacks. I was at the registration booth, tightening a loose hinge on a folding chair when Olivia crouched beside me, handing me a mug. Hot chocolate, no corporate coffee tonight. You just saved my soul, I said, taking a sip. Sweet, perfect. She smiled. Funny, I was going to say the same to you. Music drifted through the air, a local high school quartet playing soft piano covers of winter classics. The city skyline shimmered like a proud audience. Look at this, Olivia whispered, watching the volunteers laugh with guests, bending down to talk with children, helping an older man adjust his coat collar. This is what it was supposed to feel like. I nodded, like humanity showing up in 3D. She laughed quietly, then looked at me with something gentler. Luke, I need to tell you something else. About that note you left on the diner napkin. I met her gaze. You said it helped you, right? It did, she said. But what you don't know is, I almost walked away from all of this. From the company. From everything. My father passed away last spring, and I started to believe I couldn't carry what he built. That night at the diner, I'd signed the resignation letter already. Your words made me stop. I thought, maybe tomorrow is lighter. My throat tightened. I'm glad you stayed. So am I, she whispered, because now I get to see all of this. Her eyes glimmered in the lights, not with tears, just quiet gratitude. For a moment, everything felt still. The laughter, the music, the glow of the city. Then a voice broke through the hum. Dad! I turned. Noah came running across the plaza, his small backpack bouncing, his teacher trailing behind, smiling. Mr. Clay said I could come see your big project. He barreled into me, nearly knocking over the cocoa. Whoa there, astronaut, I said, hugging him tight. You're supposed to be in orbit. I landed early, he said proudly, grinning up at Olivia. Hi, are you the boss my dad keeps talking about? Olivia laughed. Guilty as charged. You must be Noah, the castle engineer. He nodded, serious. We're working on a time machine next. Perfect, she said, kneeling to his height. Your dad already fixed time once today. An hour later, the event began. I watched as Olivia stood on a small stage, not the center of attention, but close enough to be part of the crowd. She spoke briefly, thanking the volunteers, and then passed the microphone to a young mother from one of the shelters. Her voice trembled as she described how being greeted by name tonight made her feel human again. People clapped. Some wiped their eyes. Olivia glanced at me from the stage, a silent nod. See? It mattered. When it was over, she joined me by the railing overlooking the river. The lights reflected like ripples of memory. You know, she said, I think people like us, fixers, planners, survivors, we spend so much time holding things together for everyone else that we forget we're allowed to be seen too. I nodded slowly. Yeah, sometimes it takes a stranger to remind you you're still part of the story. She smiled, eyes on the water. So, what do you want next, Luke Archer? What's the big dream? I looked at Noah, now chatting animatedly with Claire near the cocoa table, his laughter carrying through the night. Honestly, just this. Maybe a steady job where I can build things that matter. Maybe a team that feels like family. Olivia looked at me for a long moment, then reached into her coat pocket and handed me a small envelope. Inside, an employment contract with the Northbridge Labs logo. Project Lead, Community Initiatives. she said softly. Full-time, good pay, flexible hours. You'd oversee designs like tonight's, making spaces more human. I stared at the paper, speechless. You're serious? I don't say things I don't mean, she replied. You've already been doing the work. Now I just want to make sure you're paid for it. Noah ran back, tugging my sleeve. Dad, did you tell her about our rocket project? Olivia crouched beside him, eyes sparkling. Not yet. Think you'd let me be part of it? He grinned. Only if you bring snacks. She laughed. Deal. I looked at the two of them, this woman who had once nearly given up, and my boy who believed his father could fix broken days. And something in me eased, like a door quietly unlocking after years of rust. The city hummed below us, alive and kind. Somewhere, a clock ticked, steady and sure. And as the night folded into laughter and light, I realized the truth I'd spent years missing. Sometimes the things you mend with your hands are small, but the lives you touch when you lead with kindness, they keep time moving for everyone.